Welcome to my channel. Today's scary story is going to be as told by a Reddit user. This happened when I was 14 years old and still living with my parents. We lived in a small cottage at the end of a long driveway down a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. There were no streetlights and only one other house in the vicinity. The nearest neighbors were at least a mile away. I woke up at around 5 a.m. for school, as I always did. When I went to use the bathroom, I noticed condensation forming on the inside of the window. It was cold outside, and this was to be expected. As I dried the window, I saw something that made me stop. My name was written on the window in what looked like fog. I thought it was pretty funny and started to laugh, but then I stopped. I didn't write that. I live alone. No one else was awake. And besides, I never write my name like that. Of course, I thought it must have been a dream or I imagined it. I shrugged and went to get ready for school. The next morning, I woke up again at 5 a.m. and went straight to the bathroom. I dried the window to find my name again. This time it said, "Wake up." I freaked out and called my mom into the bathroom. She looked at the window and said it was probably just me writing it in my sleep and not to worry about it. I didn't think so, but I knew she wouldn't believe me if I told her what I thought it was. So I kept quiet and went to school. That night, I slept over at a friend's house. When I got home, I ran to the bathroom to check the window. It had gotten much colder overnight, and there was frost on the window instead of condensation. I scraped some off to reveal the writing, which now said, "Let me in." I nearly fainted. What the hell was going on? I was scared to go to bed, so I stayed up all night watching TV with my parents in the living room. The next morning, I woke up and practically flew to the bathroom. The window now read, "I'm coming." I started screaming. I knew whatever was happening was getting worse. Called my mom again, who came to the bathroom and screamed as well. Finally, she believed me and agreed to let me stay in her room for the night. The following morning, my dad took the day off work to stay home with me because I refused to go to school. We spent the day watching TV and eating junk food while my mom worked. In the afternoon, we heard a knock at the door. We were expecting a neighbor or maybe someone from my school who was checking up on me after hearing about how freaked out I'd been. So my dad went to answer the door while I peeked around the corner to see who it was. There was no one there. The door had been knocked open by itself, and the writing on the window had changed again. It now said, "Let's play." I remember shoving my dad as hard as I could, and he fell back, hitting his head on the doorframe. He was stunned for a moment, and then started yelling at me for attacking him. Tried to explain what I saw, but he just kept yelling at me, saying I should be grateful he even bothered to come home to take care of me instead of just letting my mom handle it. I cried out and ran to the bathroom. The writing on the window had changed yet again. It now said, "He doesn't love you." I wish I remembered more of what happened that day. I blocked most of it out. All I know is that my parents fought for a very long time. I hid in the bathroom listening to them scream at each other. Eventually, they went silent, and I heard my dad leave the house. I don't know if he left the house or if he was taken away by the police. I don't want to remember what happened next. It was awful. After they finally went to sleep, I snuck out of the house through the back door and walked barefoot down the road until I reached the nearest gas station. I stayed there for the night, sleeping in the corner of the parking lot. I was too scared to go home, but too scared to knock on a stranger's door and ask to be let in for the night. In the morning, I walked back home and found my parents gone. Their car was missing, and neither of them was at their usual place at the kitchen table eating breakfast. There was a note on the counter that said, "Gone to the store, be back soon," signed with both of their names. I waited and waited, but they never came back. Later that day, I got a phone call from a friend of mine whose parents lived on the same street as us. She asked if everything was okay because she'd seen a cop car at our house earlier. I told her about the writing on the windows, and she suggested I should check the basement window. I ran to the basement stairs and slowly opened the door to the window. The writing now said, "They don't love you either." I burst out crying and fell to my knees. When my parents got home, they rushed me to the hospital, but there was nothing they could do. Couldn't scan my brain for what was there. I couldn't tell them what I felt, what I saw. My parents blamed themselves for what happened next. I kept screaming, "Don't go near the window," but they didn't listen. They wanted proof that I was ill. Instead, they rubbed my eyes and told me it would all be okay. I told them not to touch me. I told them I was sure I'd get better. But 2 days later, they decided to turn off my life support. I guess they couldn't bear seeing me suffer anymore. I never got to say goodbye to my parents. Hope they never found out what I whispered to them before I died. What was that, writing on the window? I tried to tell them it was the only way to save them, but I guess they didn't listen. Now I can hear my name being written on the window every night. And every morning when the sun rises, I can see the words scrunched up and turned away from me. I can't bring myself to look. Maybe it's a warning to others, maybe to keep them from making the same mistake I did. But I know the truth. It's me trying to warn my parents that it's too late for me, but not for them. That was a scary story, and my name is written in the fog every morning. And now it's time for you to tell me your scary story. Just paste your story into the submission form, and you might just see your story over here, just like the next Reddit user. Here's one I found especially creepy. Mr. X, many moons ago, I was on duty as a security guard working the graveyard shift. My main job was to sit in a little hut near the front entrance of the property I was guarding, and make sure nobody got in or out without proper credentials. There was a keypad right under my nose, but my manager wanted me to log all entries into the big old notebook we had lying around. One night during my shift, the alarms started blaring. Someone had triggered one of the motion sensors inside the restricted zone. According to protocol, I had to contact the police and tell them to respond with lights and sirens. While waiting for the cops to arrive, I started looking for signs of intruders. My flashlight beam landed on an entryway into the restricted zone. I peered inside and yelled, "Get out! Security!" A man holding a duffel bag appeared in the doorway. He raised his hands in submission and walked out. I radioed the cops to stand down and asked the guy what he was doing. He explained that he was supposed to meet his friend Joe for some nighttime revelry, but apparently Joe had failed to show. I told him he wasn't welcome and escorted him out. When I opened the door to step out with him, I saw a second man standing right outside. He was tall and lanky, had a shiny bald head, and was wearing a nice three-piece suit. The second guy opened the door fully, stepped aside, and gestured for my guest to enter. Before I could say a word, the first guy with the duffel bag ducked under the second guy's arm and bolted into the building. The suited man didn't react at all, just looked at me and said in a soft voice, "Are you done?" I asked him what he meant, pointed to the door and said, "Are you done with me?" I replied, "Not yet." He smiled, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp. I started to scream as he lunged at me. I blacked out right after that, presumably passing out from fear or a punch to the face. When I came to, I was lying on the floor beside my desk with the big old notebook on top of me. My boss showed up a few minutes later and helped me up. I babbled something about a man in a suit trying to kill me. He just sighed, shook his head, and walked away. The next day I came in early to check on my notebook, expecting to find it filled with pages ripped out or angrily scribbled upon. But no, it was perfect, untouched, as if nothing had ever happened. To this day I still wonder about Mr. X and what he wanted with me. Was he sent to eliminate me for knowing too much? Or not knowing anything at all? I guess we'll never know.